Welcome back to Forbidden Transformation with Karen and Chris. My name is Karen Holton, and I'm co-hosting with Chris Matthew of Forbidden Knowledge News. And for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, our mission is to support and educate the people of Earth and to assist them to evolve and experience ET contact for themselves. And in this way, we help to create and participate in the new positive timeline. In future episodes, we plan to offer more about our ET experiences, guests with common experiences and goals, more about the Quantum Health Transformation Program, and any relative news as it occurs. Chris, how are you today? Hi, Barry.
Hey, how you doing? Hello, everyone. I'm doing good. Thank you, Karen. Welcome, Barry. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm doing pretty well. Thank you, Karen.
And do you have some announcements before we get started?
Sure. Let me see here. I just have a couple of announcements. First of all, always tune in to our show, Forbidden Knowledge News. We're available on all your podcast platforms. We're on YouTube. We put out new content almost every day, and we are actually having a little bit of struggles right now because of the censorship and other issues. So we ask that you support our sponsors as well, which one of them would be C60 Purple Power. And C60 is amazing. It's an amazing super antioxidant. I've been taking it, I don't know how many months now, but I've lost so much weight and I feel so much better. And weight loss isn't even supposed to be one of the benefits, but a lot of people experience it after taking C60 because of the energy and how much better you feel. And that was one of the wonderful side effects for me. But C60 is an amazing product, and you should find out more for yourself. Just visit c60purplepower.com/knowledge10, and you get 10% off your order plus free shipping. There's links in the description. If the link doesn't happen to work, just use coupon code knowledge10 and you'll still get that discount. And like I said, right now we're facing a few difficulties. First, Forbidden Knowledge News was demonetized on YouTube. Every once in a while we have these topics that some out there consider too conspiratorial or too controversial. Now, conspiratorial and controversial topics can be harmful to people somehow. So, first they demonetize you. This happened on YouTube. Now it's happening with our podcast provider. Now they're claiming it's a glitch with their system, that we're getting views from multiple views from IP addresses that look fraudulent, but it doesn't make sense. Our shows get thousands of views per episode, and they're claiming this over 700 views. So they completely cut our demonetization, and we haven't been paid in over a month from our main podcast provider. So this is not good. We're still fighting with them, and we're going to have to, of course, find a new podcast provider, which is not fun. And they're withholding money from us. So it's a big situation that really needs to be resolved soon. And it seems that the provider is in no hurry to do so. So I also want to thank everyone that's helped us out during these times by supporting our sponsors or making a donation. If you would like to make a donation, those links are in the description, and it is very much appreciated during these times. Everybody's being censored right now. We're going through a weird, very strange period of time. We have been for a while. Everybody knows this, and there's certain topics that people don't want out there. Certain people don't want us talking about it, and so many alternative media sources are being silenced right now, and they need your support. There's a lot of people starting their own platforms. There's a lot of independent platforms coming up there. And we're going on one of them eventually. We're going to be making an announcement soon. So please support your independent platforms as much as possible. Once again, thanks to everyone who's been there helping us out and watching the whole time. Karen, any announcements from you?
Thank you, Chris. Yes. And by the way, I've been taking C62, not C62, C60 Purple Power also. And yeah, it's amazing. It's a real game changer. Even if you have to make a few sacrifices to be able to afford it, you can't put a price on health. And when you feel good, you can just do so much more. So my announcements are, I just want to remind everyone, this is a fairly new show, so please help us to reach everybody by sharing with your family and your friends and on your different social media platforms, and we really appreciate that. And the show is interactive, so today while we're live, add your questions to the comments section, and we'll get to as many as we can. Just a reminder of our new service called Intuitive Time with Karen and Chris, which is now available from my website. And I also offer services of consultation and support for spiritual matters and ET contact. And we're having a special. You can get 10% off any of these 3 services that I just mentioned. And you simply use the coupon code Knowledge10. And again, that will be in the description box below. And one other thing is, please support our work and improve your home environment by purchasing one of my beautiful Zen Domes orgone generators. I have all shapes and sizes, and they start at about $20. Oh, thank you, Chris. And they go up from there, and they're just wonderful. And you can learn all about them from my website or also from my YouTube channel and find out what they can do for you. And this is my own brand. I design them and a friend of mine makes them. So they're ethically sourced and they're double charged for maximum effect. And I guess that's it for announcements. So let's move on to our wonderful guest.
Yes. All right. Today, I want to welcome Barry Littleton. He's been on my show a few times. He is a graduate in psychology, sociology, and ethnic studies from Wichita State University. And for the last 2 decades, he's been involved in administration for at-risk youth, including cognitive behavioral modification and management aggressive behavior. He has researched and practiced several aspects of the spiritual, metaphysical, and paranormal. He has had many contact and paranormal experiences throughout his life. And he is here again to talk with us about those experiences and get some insights into them. Every time we have a chat, Barry, I learn something new and we get into some very good conversations. So welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. I'm very honored. So I've been looking forward to it. So.
Definitely. Yeah. Now, I thought we could start with this. You haven't been on this show before, so give a brief introduction into how your extraordinary experiences kind of got started in your life.
I was born, I guess you could say born somewhat aware. Strange things have always happened to me as far back as I can remember. Things started off as far as like contact experiences, like, waking up at night, not being at home and being like in some room where you like a type of a school where you're, have to do things like telepathically and actually stuff on the table. You have to like move these feathers and do things like that. It's a very weird thing that would make me tired during my normal school times. And then the events actually started crossing over into my real world as far as scientifically. Things that I could back up actually. Other things like I think that a lot of us that are awake encounter when we're young is the playmates that come around that aren't what they appear to be in that way. That happened to me a couple of times. Then the fact that I was having some type of extraterrestrial contact advanced the older I got. It became very apparent, but that led on from what I call childhood experiences into adult onset experiences. And during those, I talk about 4 experiences, mostly publicly, that involved a lot of missing time, but they were physical experiences. A little bit different when you actually have a physical experience. You can touch something on one of these crafts or, have physical effects from being in that environment. It's slightly different than the astral and dream type of experiences. I'm in no way discrediting that because I do know why that happens also. I've seen people bilocated and look what appear to be almost transparent on board these craft. So I know that they're interacting with their dream body in that way. That's something else going on there. So I don't want anyone to think I'm discrediting those that are not physical experiences. So that's kind of what's happened to me. So interesting thing. I don't mean to by any means dominate this at all, but I want to encourage something that I find it very fascinating to hear you two promoting C60. And I'll tell you why, okay? For a long time now, when I was 16, I had this experience. Actually, my experience has kind of stopped between 12 to 18. It was about 17, I had this experience. The first one when they started up again. And I woke on this ship. This is physical, and I'm standing by this, what I call an engine, a power source. And this thing has being powered by what appears to be what our science now calls a fullerene, a buckyball, not discovered at that time when I was 16. And it's emitting some type of an orgone, a life energy, and it's got these like rings around it that are moving around it. And it's projecting, it's making this light, this golden light that is projecting up this, it almost looks like a building from where I'm standing, but this is a craft. And it's like going up. I've actually got illustrations of this on my YouTube channel I've had done by Kasara to actually show you what I've seen. So it's just interesting. But the point being, without going too far on this, this device, this fullerene buckyball was, I think, probably the brains, the power source of this craft. We got to remember these are, different when these things are from different dimensions. We're dealing with materials that are coming from one dimension to the other. But just the fullerene, when I see things like that, and Sugnite, and some of these things that are coming up that are using the C60 molecule, because it looks identical to the fullerene, the buckyball. So I think we're really going somewhere there. Sorry, I didn't want to go further from where you want to go.
It's all good.
Fine.
Stick that in there because I think it's really important when dealing with 0 point energies and where we're going. It struck me so odd that as a kid, it made me start looking up what they call the honeycomb conjecture. Why do bees use that hexagon, that dodecahedron to store energy? You know what I mean? It's just things like that. So I think it's really cool you two are promoting that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a great product, and like you said, I mean, some of this stuff you can find sourced in red dwarf stars. It's very rare material. You can find it from lightning strikes, and it's something that has to be so pure whenever they make it. It'd have to be a very scientific process, but it's great stuff. But I also, again, want to encourage anyone in the chat, if you have any questions for Barry or anything, please leave that in the chat. Karen, do you have any questions before I ask my next one?
No, not at this point. But I also want to mention that the orgone generator, which is one of my brands that Chris held up, is also shungite. So I have a line of shungite ones, and that also brings again the whole fullerene thing to the table. So I think we're on to something with the fullerenes. But I have, you know what? You go ahead and ask your next question. I've got another question, but it's about the acid rain thing. So I want to, maybe a little bit later, that would be better. But go ahead and ask your question, Chris.
Sure. I'm just want to basically get your take on this. There are so many people that have different contact experiences, and more recently, a lot more people are coming out and talking about them, whether they are these astral or physical experiences. Do you think that this is possibly happening to every person on the planet, and only some of them are remembering it?
I would say, and since I've been long since a proponent, and I was always couldn't prove it until recently. I know now for sure that I thought right around 75 to 85% of our population has had contact of some type. And I'm finding out that this is even more, this is actually, even more true. And yeah, I think a lot of it, for a lot of people don't remember it, for the fact that it happens on a higher frequency, a quicker frequency, on our superconscious, subconscious, and it makes the retention of memory kind of difficult after the contact experience happens, especially the further you get away from it. So I think that is one thing that kind of made some people would be sleeping towards it. But I believe a lot of us have had contact, and that much more than I knew I wasn't alone, but now I know for sure, and we're all so unique in the way it happens because the whole thing is come on, let's be honest, it's so weird. I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
but I'm always looking for similarities and things like that. But I would say, yeah, around 85% of our population. There's the Consciousness Institute run by Ray Hernandez. They've done a lot of research on actually experiencers / abductees, and the results they found in their research, thousands and thousands of people took these surveys that are contactees, and it showed something completely different than what we hear in the media. The amount of contact that's happening is it's a large amount like that. The people that have like physical contact, like I've had, is like a smaller percentage, like 25%. But you have 75% of people that are having these astral dream experiences and maybe not recalling it. How many of us really remember our dreams when we wake up? Since my experience of the engine I was just experiencing to you with the C60, that is the one experience where I saw other humans there. One of two that I've actually seen other humans, but like I said, they were kind of phased out. And when I got up to this deck, I could see them up there. And when I actually got up there, oddly, when you try to move somewhere, you have a wish to go somewhere on one of these craft and suddenly just kind of there. And then it's like somehow the rooms, I don't know how it is, they almost maneuver around you. And that makes a great sickness comes with that with me. But there was a group of people in there. They're kind of phased out. And 4 of them I've come into contact with in my real life now. And 2 of them can remember the experience, 1 can't. Sorry, 3 of them, rather.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
And
pretty amazing.
it's fascinating. But I know why they were there, kind of astral-wise, because I'm there suffering from something they had termed in my mind temporal aphasia, which is a sickness that's worse than being on a merry-go-round. It seems to come on this craft. It's also hard to breathe due to these strange mist that's in there. It smells a lot like ammonia of some type, Windex. So these things make it kind of hard to keep your perception and keep your cognitive. So that kind of deprivates, and anyone that's going to be there in their dream body isn't going to suffer from those same aphasia problems that I was about to lose my cookies, and then the experience is over,
Hey, yeah, something else I find really interesting, and we were talking about similarities among experiences, is all 3 of us have had what you would call positive contact experiences. None of us have had, contact with grays or reptilians or some of these more negative entities. And like you and I were talking about last time, this profound feeling of love came with my experience. And you talked about it yourself, how it's hard to describe. It's not like anything you felt on earth, and it kind of makes you feel bad, like, wow, why can't I feel this type of love, and that came along with all the experience I had. So it's very different for some people. You hear terrifying experiences from a lot of people, but for the majority, I find there's a larger percentage that are experiencing positive experiences. And the entities that I came into contact with also told me that I was ready to experience this. I'd just like to get your thoughts on if you think that's something that's common, that they're coming to people who are ready.
Definitely. I mentioned before the Conscious Institute used to be called FREE, the Foundation for Research in Extraterrestrial Encounters. Ray Hernandez, I had spoke with him at a melanin contactee conference in Orlando a couple of years ago. And, something I liked that his research had showed is that, when you see the scales and the people that took the test of saying if their contact was positive or negative, the amount of positive is overwhelming on the scale. And the amount of people that have had these negative experiences is a very small percentage. And I think that there's something to be said about how our mind gets saturated with autosuggestion about grays, reptilians, super soldiers. I mean, that goes on and on to where when you have actually higher beings that might be trying to interact with you, you're filtering it out through your brain and changing the actual experience due to what you've been entrenched in. I think that's a very serious problem here. And I'm not discrediting those that have negative experiences. I know that happens and my heart goes out, but not all of us are in that situation. And I think that's not exposed enough in the media. You don't hear nearly enough about the positive contact that gets laughed off as, oh, Space Brothers, that stuff, man, but sorry, I don't know if I addressed that right, but something that I did experience around these entities that I've been around, as you both have, is that and I did a video, about around some of these, it's like you almost feel something that in pranayama they call Shakti Pat, where you're around these entities and it's like a release of your kundalini, it's a release of your chakras are moving. I mean, it really gets you going. It's a faster vibration that pushes you in a way. It's very interesting, and I'd done a thing, I can see how on lower level beings could take that along with the aid of AI, easily fool people with holograms and things like that. And for example, and I'll shut up, but for me, one of these childhood friends that came to me, all right, and this will go into what Karen wants to talk about, is that, first of all, he came and played with me a few times. He always seemed to suddenly have to leave very quickly, and he was a telepath like me. So many of us are telepaths in childhood and just think everyone can do it, which technically can to a degree, but not everybody can exercise it. So, but he kept coming around, then I finally see him on this craft. And when I see him on this craft, this individual looks like insectoid, but he's in a uniform, but yet I know it's him. So what was he doing consciously to me and the people that were near, especially optically, to where he appeared to be more just a kid that I was playing with, opposed to this grasshopper looking entity? I think it says a lot about what they can do consciously when we're in the presence of them, especially through the optical nerves. Just, my theory only on that.
Yeah, I agree that these beings have such high advanced, not only consciousness, but technology, and I think they can integrate it. And they've learned over, however many thousands of years how to use that. And it just makes me wonder sometimes how much of this planet is kind of like an experiment for them, or are these, they're factions of these beings that are actually guardians of this planet and looking out for us against the experimental ones. It gets to be very very interesting when you start to look at that.
There's every indication that this is a laboratory. You've got these weird creatures that go into the fossil record, that come in and come out of existence, some that just go into folklore, into cryptids and things like that. There's every indication that this place is some type of a laboratory, and it's disconcerting because for whatever reason, a lot of the entities that incarnate here, same as you and I, are of a very almost demonic nature, and they're destroying the biosphere, and all this crazy stuff goes on here that make this a very hellish place. And the major factor that I think a lot of us will agree that we're immortal souls, but yet we incarnate here, many of us devoid of soul life memory. What kind of crap is that, man? That's like saying, okay, I'm a senior in high school, but hey, I can't remember kindergarten to 11th grade. That sucks. That's not it. Sorry, I didn't go into left right what you want to talk about, but it's just, it all kind of, it's like a tapestry.
It's all interrelated. Absolutely. I just wanted to throw one other thing out there. And that is, we all have our own perceptual arena. So you and I can walk into a store and see very different things, experience very different things, because really we create the meaning within our own minds, and we all see things a little bit different and perceive things a little different. So I think that's part of the mix too, about our experiences. So we may be influenced, like what you were saying, Barry, by the negative propaganda regarding contact. There are I believe a very small percentage of the population is psychopathic, and I don't know if they have the same abilities that we have, because we're able to operate on the love harmonic, and so they produce that negative propaganda, and I think that gets into people's minds, and then when they have an experience, that is part of their perception. So I think that's another part of it as well. It's an amazing experience to be alive on Earth, though, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of souls want to get in here. You get the food, you get the sex, you get all these things that is very feeling, a very material feeling that I think is lacking on the other side. So in
Mhm.
that way, a lot want to be here. I like the way you worded that, Karen, because that shows something like one of that on that survey, they asked questions about, I found interesting about the reptilians, because someone has to put on there, I've not experienced that. And the fact I've not seen a 9-foot tall bipedal crocodile is cool with me. I don't really need that. But but when the scale, actually the graph, what it showed though, the people that had negative experience with them was still the small percentage of
Mhm.
those that were neutral was very big, on account of when they have to fill out about that, is they're saying that they were scared by the appearance of the beings, but they
Mhm.
never actually did anything to them. No psychic assaults or anything like that. So I find that interesting, like what is really going on and how much the media is skewing what real contact is going on right now. I mean, right now, that's the real disclosure. People like us talking, because there's a lot of us and a lot of people that won't even talk to their own mate. Well, I had this experience, but I didn't tell my wife about it. I didn't tell my husband about it. I said, well, why not? I don't want them to think I'm crazy.
Mm.
Oh, you know.
Right. Now, Karen, do you have any other questions? Because I'd like to get into, after you have any questions, some of the messages and, meaning and, what we can do going forward after receiving our messages.
Well, I was actually hoping Barry could just talk a little bit about how his contact changed. Barry, how your contact changed once you had the acid rain download, because that shifted things, didn't it, for you somewhat?
Yeah, that was interesting. Do you want me to go over the experience?
Sure, you can. Yeah, of
Oh,
course.
okay. I was in the 6th grade, and I had woke up one night. I was not in my home. I was on this craft, and the craft actually had a large screen in the middle of this room, and floating on the side is this entity, this insectoid that looks like a grasshopper with milky eyes. He's got on a uniform, and this is the individual that had come and played with me when I was a child. And although he didn't look exactly the same, I knew it was him, but he seemed more like a scientist, felt much more ancient. And immediately I started asking questions. I can only speak for myself. When I'm in the presence of non-humans and waking up on like some type of a field trip, which is exciting, but it's very startling. And I start immediately asking questions, and a lot of them would be answered telepathically before I could ask them. That's a little disconcerting too, before I could formulate them in my mind. You got to get used to that, and then, but my question is, I'm looking at this screen and I'm seeing like 3 ships out here. Okay. And it looks like we're over some type of a snow pass, like a Himalayan or Rocky Mountain or something. And these ships look like they're sucking up clouds underneath them, like almost smog. And he's telepathically telling me that the acid rain is very bad for your planet. The metals and the microwaves are bad for us and bad for your planet. And he's implying that's one of the reasons they don't come out of those craft. Anyway, so that immediately I start asking questions like, is this a deception? I'm thinking, because I've never heard of acid rain. And he's kind of explaining that. And I'm starting asking, where are you from? And he's put in my mind, go 900 million light years out beyond the space-time continuum. And I didn't know what that meant. He'd been implying that anyway. That's true. I figured it out later on, but it took years. Anyway, so this experience in the back of this craft was an engine that I've also shown that was, I call the Quasi crystal engine, and another room in the back of this that I think takes us to a whole nother level when dealing with sentient technology. All right. But anyway, so fast forward this, maybe a few days later, not even a week, on a Friday, my teacher in the 6th grade would make us read this current events magazine called Scholastic News. And she'd often have somebody come up there and read like the main article, something terrifying as you could well imagine. And I got selected this week. And I go up there to read this, and I'll never forget it, because on the front of the Scholastic News was the Statue of Liberty. And the article I had to read was about the Statue of Liberty parts of it being closed down due to being reconstruction and repainting from damage due to from acid rain. When I was reading that, and I see the word acid rain. I like screamed it out and everybody started laughing. I think I got in trouble. But it just, this, the fact is, the way I saw how much this had crossed over into real, what happened to me is real. It's a physical experience, so it's real. But the fact you don't have any little trinket, so you can't prove anything, it seems so, and it's hard to have a frame of reference for what you're experiencing also. It just makes things really tough if you're a kid, if you're an adult, whatever the case. Anyway, point being, that is when it crossed over in my life. I knew for sure that this was very real, and now, so my next thing was, I'm gonna try to grab some technology, something that I can prove this, but it didn't work that way. And my experiences stopped after that, from the ages of about 12 and a half to right around 17. And then they started up again, really intense. So.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Did you have any other questions for now?
No, go. Let's go with what you've got, Chris.
Okay. So basically, we've each received messages from Contact. My message was pretty direct, that the planet is in trouble, basically, that we can't rely on any, political leader or anything like that, that we have to make changes ourselves. And it's going to take all of us. It's going to take a lot of people, but it's possible. I was given the message that these light, dark battles happen throughout time. And I was also told that the light is always, coming out on top. So that made me feel a little better. But the entity that I spoke with, we talked about this last time, Barry, was one of the main things is they're trying to get rid of what Karen called earlier the love frequency. That it's trying to be extinguished from this planet. And that's one of the most important things, is to bring back this love frequency. And he also called it Christ consciousness, which has nothing to do with religion or Jesus or anything like that. It's a state of spirituality. And that was my main message, that we need to revive this. We need to bring back this love frequency to the world that is dying out, and it's being taken over by technology. There's a form of technology worship that is trying to be pushed upon the masses. And it's also at the same time extinguishing this love frequency, which is not a good thing. So that was that's my main takeaway from my whole experience, is that we each have a job to do. If we don't like the direction we see things going on our planet, we have to use whatever talents, whatever thoughts, whatever. We have to use our voices, our minds, everything to express that we don't consent to what's going on, and doing everything we can to make our changes around us and then move from ourselves outward. So that was my message to, I guess, to keep me going, to keep doing what I'm doing right now and keep getting information out and keep having guests like yourself to share this information. So I'm just wondering, what kind of messages, like big picture messages, have you gotten, and are they similar?
Yeah. I think that's the first primary has been the earth thing. And I can say everything I've seen them doing is always revolving around the earth, and I think as far as humanity, us individual contactees, some of them, depending on the beings we're dealing with, are trying to awaken us to our soul life memories, I think, especially dealing with, not just places that we hear about so much in the New Age circles and ufology, Pleiades and Ceres and always these places. We have to understand that galactic wise, cosmological, we're up to trillions of galaxies, trillions. That means a lot of our experiences are extragalactic, and we're not hearing about that at all. That's something that kind of, troubled me a lot, was I wasn't hearing about the beings that I was dealing with, or about the areas of space that are coming through to me. You know what I mean? It's things like that. So, I hopefully I'm answering your question there. That. So I think in that way, our free will is very much a true thing, that they don't interfere so much. Because I would try to think messages out in these contacts, like what's going to happen, and never will they give me any future scenarios. but they've showed me the past
Mhm.
and said that this won't happen again. I'm seeing something like Earth, like an ash or something similar to that. So I think that we need to be aware of really what wars have really transpired here in the last billion years this planet's been alive. So I think that that's an answer to it. I know definitely, though, I've even seen a ship that was like giving light to the Earth of a type. And I think the same light that they're trying to give to us, I once that entity coming through with this stuff telling me about something called transonial enlightenment for the human race. There's these concepts like that they give to you and download. I hear the download word a lot, but just a communication to me, a channel or open deal. But I don't know. So I would say yes, as far as focusing on the Earth is the primary thing that's come through my experiences, as well as remembering who we are. I think galactically, even earthbound. Some of us have been here several times, but we got a problem. We're carrying these, I know people call them contracts, but I call them traumas from past lives. It's real bad here. And then we got the issue that, more than half our population doesn't even believe in past lives. So how do you combat that? How do you combat something else that we threw out last time? And this is where I think the Christ consciousness thing, and Chris, I was blown away that came up last time. Of all the interviews I've done, I don't really discuss that. And the truth is, all these beings have always used those terms with me. And I always, because I have no religion, so my first, oh no, not the brainwashing stuff, but it's not. It's beyond social economic religion. It's a frequency of the Creator that we can access. And they've alluded to me. There's a frequency even higher than that. I don't know what it is, but I mean, there's much more I think we can be. But just accessing the Christ consciousness has stopped me from ever being assaulted in any of these experiences. I've never had a sexual connotation to any of them. You know what I mean? They've been very much just trying to keep my cookies and not throw up due to the
Right.
difference. The inside and the outside of the ship are not in the same dimension. So when you're on board some of these craft in our third dimensional body, it can apparently support us, but there's some effects that happen with it. Anyway, sir, I'll shut up. I'm going way too far.
No, that's actually, I want to talk about the ships because I find that a fascinating aspect. Do you have anything, Karen, before we get into that?
I only want to add that when I was having a lot of my experiences, when it was, I kind of hit a high point in my life, I didn't have human language for what I was experiencing. And it wasn't until I found out about a kind of a loose but broad perspective on the Christ consciousness that it came right into focus. So rather than, and no disrespect to the Christians, but rather than me having to worship a man named Christ who was on earth and try to follow him, understanding that he had Christ consciousness. And so we emulate that level of awareness. And then I also believe that our minds, bodies, souls, our planet, everything is also technology. And so we can change reality by changing ourselves. So my big teaching and learning was to look after my own sovereignty and be responsible for the decisions I make, for my body temple, for my health, for all these things. And it's been a fascinating ride because my reality has shifted and shifted and shifted again in ways I never dreamed possible just through taking my own personal responsibility. So I don't want to take too much away from this because I want to get onto what Chris is wanting to talk about is with the ships and stuff. But I just wanted to say that ditto, ditto, ditto. I'm also wondering if anyone before we move on from our viewers, has made a comment or anything that we could slip in here before we get going again.
Yeah, let me check the chat here. Let's see. Let's see. Does Barry have his own YouTube channel? You do, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's sadly I don't have any cool handles. It's just under Barry Littleton on YouTube. There are about 238 videos there. If you go into the playlist, a lot of different things there, especially concerning my experiences. I show a lot of the sketches I've had done by Kasara on a lot of those videos. So
okay, cool.
It kind of helps illustrate the experience a little more than me just talking. So
I actually do have another question. This is from Raised by Giants. Thank you, Ryder. Does Barry have any info on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction tomorrow and how it could affect our consciousness to shift us into a positive timeline?
Interesting question.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, something that just shocks me interesting about this, and this is not something I'm an expert on, but technically, all right, this is only occurs every 800 years, right? And I understand that's one thing, as well as what it may do as far as gravitational perturbance in the solar system. But you know, something interesting, I was talking with a friend of mine named Halbert. He runs something called the Uranta Book News, the Uranta News. And he's really intense on that book. Now, I personally will just be open. I have a few problems with that book, all right? But once I put my personal bias aside and try to really look at the information and get the value out of that. But something he was talking about two dates. This has been several weeks ago. He started talking about December 14th and then also specifically December the 21st, and how that book is saying that that's when Yeshua was supposed to return. That's an indication of his returning. You know, for me, I think more maybe about just possible ascended masters of different type appearing again on this planet, as opposed to one individual. But I just find that interesting that that book seems to have this specifically this date correlated in there. I mean, I had not looked at it and it's intense enough to him to know that part of it. So just something that I keep hearing about this date overall. So it'll be interesting to see. Are we going into a different time, a different space, I don't know.
Yeah, it's always interesting because, I mean, so far from what I've experienced with people calling on dates is the date will come and then the next day will come and it'll be the same thing. But, you know, you never know. Something could happen. That's just my own experience with people who set dates for big events and things like that, you know.
So the younger audience may not remember, but we went through that Y2K thing.
Yeah.
And everybody said, oh gosh, what do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen? I say that what's going to happen is you're going to go to work and you're going to go to sleep and you're going to wake up and you're going to go back to work. You just wake up, go back to work. That's what I think's going to happen. I don't think it's going to be a destruction of the entire computer system. But there's little things like that. There are always these dates, you know, and I know there's a great deal of people that are so proud to announce that the virus thing is going on. All right. And, you know, that's been something that's always been trying to be introduced to the population. You're not that psychic on that. Okay. You could go all the way back to things like there was a movie, it was a Dustin Hoffman Outbreak. And when the whole actual Ebola thing happened, how there were different strains of that mysteriously were coming out. You know, there's been several different viruses for longer than that, going all the way back. That's an attempt to ruin our world. And it's finally been successful. But yet I'm not hearing about things like some of these technologies like we might have seen. I've seen healing technologies on board these craft, but that part of the experience, contact experience, is not being explored. You know, healing technologies such as things that deal with high plasma or even the possibility of sound ablation of viruses. And I don't want to get too far on this, but when you actually technically look at a virus, the structure of it, especially one that caught my attention, bacterial phage is what it's called, a virus that attacks bacteria. When you look at it, it looks completely alien. And when we start getting into type 3, type 4 civilizations that have actually done things not just on the nano, but on the pico, and have advanced that type of society that may have made a Dyson sphere around their solar system, they're going to be doing inner space. But if they're going to send out self-replicating machines to attack a race, you're looking at something right there. To me, viruses themselves. I'm not saying that's true, but just looking at them scientifically, it's very odd and what they do. And now we know a lot about these self-replicating machines.
It is a very interesting thought. Yeah, definitely. It's something to look at. Now
creepy,
earlier,
but it is what
it is creepy. Now, you mentioned earlier something that really kind of caught my ear. You said the outside of these ships may be in our physical dimension, but once you get inside, you could be in a whole different dimension. I've heard accounts of abductees, contactees that will be outside all of a sudden, or they'll float up to a ship, and then they're in this massive. It looks like not only a room, but just open, for miles and miles, and it doesn't match the size of the ship that they saw before they were inside. What do you think is going on in there inside these ship environments?
That happened to me. This craft, on my first of my adult onset experiences, this golden then blue beam takes me in, and the first room I go into looks to me almost like a cargo bay. It's big enough to put what I seem to see in the sky in there, I would swear. And let alone the other rooms that seem to be in there that were maneuvering around me. And I don't know what this says about geometrical spacing, but it's a trip. And it takes things to someone like me started getting into Doctor Who, because the TARDIS, quote unquote, is bigger on the inside than the out. And they call it transdimensional engineering. And that sounds like a joke in science fiction crap. But when you really start getting into scientifically temporal engineering, what is that? And I'll say something about this craft. Okay, it's interesting because I've been recently had some scientists wanting to talk about this craft. At first, it appeared to be, I wish I had my sketches, it appeared to be almost a Pleiadian type of craft, as they call them, or Venetian, kind of similar to the one George Adminsky had seen, somewhat. And then this thing starts morphing on me. It starts flashing and morphing and turns into these things that look like these crystals connected like a molecule floating in the sky until it finally was gone. And it's emitting a light. And what it did to me perceptually to see this, it really kind of messed me up. I mean, I would try to research it. I couldn't find any contactees or experiencers that was talking about this or seeing anything similar. Maybe Ezekiel's wheel, but that's still not what I saw. You know what I mean? So that right there was saying for a long time, I was trying to understand what in the world could that craft possibly do that on the outside, but I was inside of it. And when I'm watching it there, I can still see the technology and some of the beings, and the information is still there. It hasn't started fading yet, as these tend to do after the experience is over. So that right there, made me evaluate what is it that I'm seeing inside this craft. I saw in this craft, I'll give you an example. I've got all illustrations of this on my YouTube channel, and I got a big Patreon channel that I've got far more videos on there than I do on YouTube. Anyway, this craft in every room had these things that look like, to me, they look like almost eggs, like glass on the outside of them, but in the back of them was like a metal sheet, and it went into the wall actually, and these almost mushroom fungus type of a wall that shows that these craft are organic, at least the ones I've been on board. And inside of these eggs though was like this real thick mist, thicker than the mist that you're breathing on the decks of the craft. And inside of that are these lights, different light configurations. Some look like condensed light, some look like plasma balls, things like that. I thought for a minute that these were probably power sources I was looking at, these eggs, different sized one in every room I was in. And I noticed a lot of time these beings that are half phased out, they're paying attention to these eggs also. And I'm trying to examine one and touching it and stuff. Feels kind of glass-like to me. I find out later, when I'm about to throw up and pass out in one of these rooms, two of these lights emerge from this tube, from this egg, and attached to me. They're like attached kind of to me, like to my biofield, and they're stopping me from passing out. That's when I realized, well, these aren't power sources. These are crew members, non-corporeal crew members. So what I'm describing to you is what is it really like to be on board a multi-dimensional ship? It ain't like Star Trek. Sorry, it isn't like Star Trek. Sulu in over there, Spock in over here. I give you a much better story. It's completely different. And along with the sickness you feel on board, so that says a lot about how the outside of the craft is able to exist in our dimension to be seen, and apparently enough materialized density enough for us to be sustained there. But yet it's from somewhere else, a different dimension. So even when I saw this transformation into this crystal and then it went out, that's very well what this craft that pre-programmed to where it knows it's going. It's sharing an imprint that it's going to look like in its destination point. Possibility that takes us into quantum hologram of consciousness and things like that. Food for thought only, all right?
I've heard descriptions where no crew members, the craft itself was the entity that was communicating with the contactee and interacting with it, which that is fascinating that, a craft is biological. It's intelligent.
Well, the fact that I'm moving around in there and not being quote unquote escorted, of course, I'm so sick, I'm not going to do much damage, but the fact that I'm not being escorted, but still receiving information. And when you're communicating with one of the beings, it's like one-on-one telethought. It's direct. But yet I'm receiving information the entire time I'm moving around in there. I'm sure it's from the craft itself. Just like it knows my intentions. It knows I'm not going to do anything. I think it says a lot about the symbiotic connection, because they're telling me what in the experience communicating with me, because I asked, trying to think about what is the metals, the stuff I'm seeing. And they're telling me, that it's a combination of metals that are mined from planets that are devoid of Van Allen belts and atmospheres. There's some sort of a agreement. They're taking metals from there that are so strong due to the amount of solar radiation they're getting bombarded with. They're taking these type of amorphous metals and then combining that with a fungus and then a type of DNA from the crew. And then this compound is grown over a wormhole. So the engine itself is temporarily displaced. And that explains a lot, like when you see people, a lot of contactees will say when they touch the light coming off one of those engines, that column, not unlike the column I just kind of described that was connected to the C60 engine looking type of thing. When they touch that light, they say it turns into the Akashic records and turns into a wormhole. That would be why. It's constructed over that, actually. It's grown over that. And we have really got to look at when we're dealing with, the contact, real contact, and expanding our parameters of it. When you start looking at our planet and the way the fungus interacts with the trees and the tree system, we're not just talking about that movie, Avatar. We're going way beyond that. But the way the fungus would work as a type of trees that work as an antenna system, and we have a lot of these craft coming in, going into the earth, going into what's called the deep biosphere. We're hearing so much about Admiral Byrd and Hollow Earth and stuff like that. We don't look at the real science and what the deep biosphere is, how 95% of Earth's bacteria exists there, undiscovered. It's a whole nother thing doing with symbiotic communication of organisms. Just like I believe these craft, for example, the first room I was sucked into was so much bigger. It looked like a cargo bay, and there's some equipment in there, like this box and this blue beam, this blue stuff in it. But to me, it looked very much like that could be a cargo bay, or to either hold another ship, or what I think is to actually grow another one. These are organisms. They reproduce. Whole nother thing.
And that's absolutely fascinating. Did you have any comments or questions about that, Karen?
Yeah, I'm all excited because Barry, my experience is that the ships, the one in particular that I go to it's enormous. You can't even imagine how big it is, but it's biological. It has consciousness. And so what's really, we got to stop thinking in human-centric terms because it's too limiting. So this ship is not only biological, not only has consciousness, but the inside where myself and some of the people who live there cohabitate, it's interactive. So because we're psychic with each other, we're also psychically linked to the ship. And the ship knows what we need. And it's kind of like nanotechnology, like think of nanobots, except this is organic and they can come together and form what you need And, and it's just so amazing. I could do 6 shows just on my experience, so I'll try to shut up here, but I wanted to add to that. So the fact that they're alive. And the other thing is the ship that I go to, it collects particles and things it needs from space, like from asteroids and all these different things. But what was really interesting to me is that the main energy source was actually the crew members. We actually consciously, and we formed it into a cultural celebration where we offer some of our life force energy to the ship because we love the ship and the ship loves us. And then we have a celebration kind of similar to Christmas where we take it easy, we eat food, we replenish our energies because we can build them back up. So it's very symbiotic, the relationship. And that's why it's so exciting for me to hear you, Barry, talk about your experiences, because I'm going, oh my God, this is really interesting, because up until a year ago, I never came up with any of this. I've just been finding people. And I'm sorry, I'm going to be quiet now and let you continue, but I just find it fascinating.
It's very interesting because when you consider that these are things coming from a different dimension, and things like I consider being a power source is also the brain of the craft as well. So these are things that are combined into separate things the way we're experiencing technology here. To the fact that I've even questioned before when I'm going through some of these rooms, like being drawn into them or how material, I don't know how it even works, but is it almost like being digested to a degree? Do you know what I mean? As far as we're moving around inside of the living organism like that, it's very, very interesting. I'm always looking for similarities. So that drives me to a lot of science fiction. And one episode that I think kind of mirrors what we're talking about here is an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation called Tin Man. And Tin Man was an organic craft that was around a dying star. And in the end, they have a betazoid that goes in there, and actually the ship even makes him a seat, but that is so much more accurate to where I always look at like that knew about this. They had to have experienced it and seen something. Similar to like I've seen a lot of crystalline technology that has these crystals, all of them seem to emit this type of bioluminescent or chemical luminescence coming from the inside out. They look living crystals. And the ones here don't do that. And it's, I think, a whole nother way to do power sources. And also what you were talking about that I agree on is that these craft are dealing with life energy. So when you've got a part of that compound, I said that was the DNA involved in there, that creates a symbiotic connection. You have Kundalini energy it runs on. I've seen a lot of these craft are extracting orgone prana energy from actually water. So when you see a USO going like that with that weird deal over water, a lot of times they're extracting that life energy and processing it through, which is used for gravity modification of the craft, for power of the craft itself, nourishment, different things. These are just things that we need to think of really when dealing with biological organisms, the ones we see on Earth especially,
Very interesting. I just have one more thing to address before we close out. Is there anything you'd like to mention or ask Karen before I do so?
No, but I want to do this again sometime in the near future.
Oh yeah, it's definitely awesome.
Cool.
Now, you also mentioned something earlier that I thought was important to bring up, is the type of communication when you are communicating with these entities. For me, you mentioned it's like instantaneous psychic communication. Before you can even finish asking the question, the answer's there. That's the way I've experienced it with the beings I've communicated with. It felt great to be able to do that, to be able to have such communication where it was like effortless. You just think and then the answer is there. Is that the same kind of way it happened for you?
Man, yeah, and I'll tell you something. Let's throw this in real quick. It's works. My brother just mentioned this the other day. I had went out to that Ascetti Ranch, and I had a mind speak telepathic experience as one of these things that apparently was a Sasquatch is watching me out there. But I tell you, the amount of telethought it projected at me was so keen, it overpowered me, and it cut the channel off, and I couldn't strike it back up. And it wasn't quite to the level that you and I are talking about with the extraterrestrials, or star beings, but man, it was real close. He was a much stronger telepath than I. You know what I mean? So I still don't know what they actually are, what those things are. Anyway, sorry. I don't know why I just gravitated to throwing that out. Like my brother said, man, all the weird stuff that happened to you, you didn't really believe in no Sasquatch till you went out to that ranch. I said, well, I had questions, but so much for that.
That's interesting. Sasquatch psychic communication as well.
I've heard of them doing mind speak. You know, those that go away from they're just animals. Whatever is out there in that area is something different. That felt like some type of a shaman to me, something very old, something very powerful, not powerful, wise more. But the amount of telethought, because it came in, I felt emotion, I'm hearing words, but I'm also getting pictures. I mean, it was really strong when it came through and quick. So yeah, because I was just basically tripped out. I was afraid I was going to see one. I was going to jump out of the bushes. So I was walking down there saying, look, I even said out loud, I thought it out, and I said out loud, I say, look, I'm from the Midwest, and I want to have an encounter, but that was just talk. So if one of y'all are 12 feet tall and you jump out of the bush on me, I'm going to freak out. So please just don't do it. And I went and sat down in the cab, and I couldn't go to sleep, and I started getting this telethought started going off. All of a sudden, really strong, about 4 a.m. Anyway, sorry, I shut up.
Oh yeah, that's
all
interesting.
good.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. But as far as the communication, do you think that that all of these more advanced beings, that it's just psychic communication, or have you ever had more of a physical communication like we're having now with any of these beings?
For me, it's always been telethought, telepath with them. And like I said, it comes in so much and so strong. It seems like some of the things they're actually answering, like we mentioned, how you can, as you're actually trying to get the words together in your mind to send, they're answering already. So there's something that it seems like they're just slightly ahead of us in that way. So I think that we're very behind, or maybe our telepathic skills, but very few of them, I've never had like one talking to me unless it's a charter, which is a humanoid that's walking around our population here, I believe. So yeah, it's
Awesome.
and something else that comes with it is the emotion, like that love frequency you mentioned that comes, and there's something about that they project enough of that it seems to nullify a lot of the fear of the experience itself. At least for me, it did, because I'd be tripping
Definitely,
out,
same
man.
thing.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
tripped out, nervous
Same.
guy. Yeah, you
It
know.
always makes me cry. Whenever spirit moves me in a strong way, it's so intense. I just have tears coming out my eyes. And sometimes I channel that love through the internet out to viewers as well. And when I'm doing that, I'm crying, and it's a bit embarrassing, but it's just how my physiology resonates with that intensity. But it's so beautiful that once we've experienced it, we never, ever doubt again that we're loved. And that gives, at least for me, something to sustain me through the dark times, through the troubling, challenging times, knowing that this is what we perceive as everything is not even the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more. And it's so lovely.
So, something I want to throw in too, Chris, is that when doing this communication as well, is that some of these beings, it seem like they can project almost a landscape to you in that type of a way. So they can almost create like a hollow room optically with you. And, you know, that is done not just with AI, but I think they're doing it consciously too.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability that I encountered an entity that actually is a female, and she bilocated me across the room. I'm physically standing there. Then all of a sudden it seemed like I was floating and I was being sucked towards this dark eye, and I'm smashing into it. So that says a whole lot about an entity that can consciously bilocate one of us.
Mm-hmm.
So that puts it on a whole nother level, you know. And like example, the one time I did experience some type of thing they called a synaptic helmet, and this is on board a pure conscious craft and they were saying it was used for a frame of reference, because I think they're having a hard time even meeting me halfway. So in that way, and then having a frame of reference, because the whole place was almost distable. And they're telling me though that this technology can be used, this technique is used by lower vibrational, darker entities to trick people. So that takes us into things like what I think Carla Turner was talking about, and the virtual scenario technology and stuff like that. So that's just something to be aware of for those that may be having negative contact. I have not, as I tell you both have not, but it's just something to be aware of, you know. But for the higher beings, I think not just being in their presence can it release our Kundalini, like having a Shakti pad experience, but also they can also project the landscape to us, the environment to us, and things like that. So it's just something to be aware of. And that may not be done as a type of assault, but it's just being in the presence of a higher, different consciousness that's just more evolved.
Yes, yeah, well, very well said.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Barry, thank you so much for coming on today. That was great information. We'll definitely have to do this again. Before you go, if people are interested in finding out more about your work, any social media websites, let them know where they can find you.
Okay. Good one is YouTube, Barry Littleton. I'm also on Patreon. I do a lot of work there. And I do have a website, barrylittleton.com. It's always up and coming. I haven't actually got it structured all that good, but it does have links to my other social media on there, like Instagram and stuff like that. So a good one, though, is Patreon and YouTube to catch me there. A lot of work there. You can see the experiences and some illustrations and stuff like that.
Awesome. Thank you
Wonderful.
so much
I
again, Barry.
appreciate you both having me on. Thank you. It was a
Oh,
good conversation.
Yeah, I'll
our
turn it
our
over to
pleasure.
Karen here, and Karen will close us out.
Okay. So just to remind everyone that Forbidden Transformation with Karen and Chris is every 2 weeks. So sometimes people look for us every week and where are you guys? Of course, sometimes we have technical difficulties as well, and we're a little bit late getting started because when you go live, anything can happen. So so we're always at 1 o'clock Mountain Time on this YouTube channel. And as I mentioned in our introduction, we now offer consultation and support services. The links and the coupons will be in the description below. And we have a Forbidden Transformation Facebook group to offer peer-to-peer support. Now, this is a closed group, so you have to ask to become a member. And we're always looking for moderators. It's a very small group at this point, but we just didn't want a bunch of looky-loos and a bunch of trolls. We wanted, people who sincerely want to be able to not have their feelings hurt when they're first coming out and start talking about their experiences. So that's what we have. So Forbidden Transformation on Facebook. And our next show is episode 10. And it will include you, our viewers, because we're going to talk more about our ET experiences and we're going to answer any questions that you might have. And so we air January the 3rd, 2021 at 12 noon Pacific, 1 o'clock Mountain, 2 o'clock Central, or 3 o'clock Eastern time, again on this YouTube channel. And again, all the links will be, all the links to our information and services will be also listed below. And if you would like to contact us, we now have a designated email address for the show. It is forbiddentransformation@gmail.com. And until next time, Chris and I wish you much light, love, and happiness. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you again, Barry.
Yes, thank you, Barry.
Night, everyone.